Welcome back. In this episode, we will get to know statutes and public laws. And yes, you read that right, using the force for legal research. In our story on statutes, just like Star Wars, we start with episodes 4 through 6, right in the middle, in our case, in the middle of the legislative process. So we start with a piece of legislation already signed by the president that has become the law, all grown up like Luke Skywalker, except its name is public law. We will see how our hero, public law, came to be when we look at the prequel in episodes 1 through 3 covering legislative history. For now, let's get to know our hero, public law, a little bit better. So here we see our hero, public law, which is the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, or as we've also seen it called, ERISA. But our public law's full name is Public Law 93406. Understanding what these numbers mean and how they got assigned will help you a great deal in your statutory research, so let's investigate further. And we will start by looking here at congress.gov for the 115th Congress. Now, a Congress is just a 2-year period of time for a particular 2 years. So we see the 115th Congress started in 2017 and ends in 2018. A Congress lasts 2 years because, of course, the House of Representatives sits for 2 years. So if you look at prior years, you'll see the years that cover prior Congresses, or the time periods that cover prior Congresses. So the 114th Congress started in 2015 and ends in 2016. 113th started in 2014, ended in 2014, and so forth. So let's take a look at these particular public laws to understand how these numbers got assigned. So here we're looking at 115-84. So we now know that the first number is the Congress in which that law was enacted, the 115th Congress, which we already see is started in 2017 and ends in 2018. And this particular public law 115-84 is the 84th public law that was enacted in the 115th Congress. So looking down here to public law 115-83, that's the 83rd law that was enacted in the 115th Congress. To understand Congresses a little bit better, let's take a look at this table of historical Congresses. So not surprisingly, the first Congress started in 1789 when our Constitution was adopted. So since a Congress lasts 2 years, the second Congress would start 2 years later in 1791. And if you did the math, you could figure out that 1974, when our hero Public Law 93406 was enacted, would actually be in the 93rd Congress. So taking a look back here at our hero, Public Law 93406, we now know that our hero was enacted in the 93rd Congress, and it was the 406th law that was enacted in that Congress. So another thing we can see here is where our hero, or really on what planet our hero lives. Our hero lives in the 88 Stat planet. Stat stands for Statutes at Large, so of course this means that our hero lives in volume 88 of the Statutes at Large, and our hero starts here. On the right we see the page, so our hero starts on page 829. So let's get to know our planet a little bit better. So our planet, Statutes at Large, would look like this if you looked for it on the shelf. In print, you will also find Statutes at Large in a bunch of different places online. But in print, if you were to turn to the title page, the first page, we would get to know a little bit more about volume 88 of the Statutes at Large. We would see that, of course, it's 1974, and that it contains the public laws 93-246 through 93-446. So, of course, our hero, Public Law 93-406, falls in between, so will be in this volume of the Statutes at Large. Another planet on which you will find our hero is called USCAN, or U.S. Code, Congressional and Administrative News. Now, we don't expect you to remember that or even have to ever say it again, but you might want to know USCAN because you will see USCAN cited sometimes in cases and also occasionally in law reviews. And as you can see, our hero looks pretty much the same here on Planet USCAN as our hero did in Statutes at Large, where you see the title of the act as well as the public law number, our hero's name, and then the table of contents of the sections within our public law. So as you might imagine, our hero was enacted in 1974, but as you might imagine, probably was changed in all of those years since then. Just like Luke, who grew a beard, got a little gray, got a few wrinkles, our hero has changed over time as well. And for our hero, those changes are known as amendments. But we really don't want to have to check through however many amendments there were and find each and every public law since 1974 that might have changed our hero. We want to know what the law is today for our client. We want to know the law as it exists today, incorporating all of those amendments. And for statutory research, this is where the force comes into play. And for statutory research, the force is known as codification. So just as Yoda taught Luke the force, our hero has the force applied to him and becomes codified. And what that means is each section of our public law gets separated out section by section into the various subjects that each of those sections are about. And they get put into a subject-arranged resource known as the U.S. Code, so that way we can do research by subject on a particular subject, and we can look to the codification, to the U.S. Code, to determine how our section exists today. So in other words, the U.S. Code incorporates all of the public laws that may have changed our hero since 1974. So let's take a look at the U.S. Code, because I think looking at it will help make more sense. And what we will do is look at the U.S. Code on Lexis. And what we see is the U.S. Code is divided up, as I said, by subject. So here we have subject, the Congress. And what the U.S. Code does is it assigns each subject a number, and the U.S. Code calls subjects titles rather than subjects. So the Congress is Title II. We can see the aliens and nationality subject is called title in Title VIII. Crimes and criminal procedures, you'll find all sections about crimes and criminal procedure in Title 18. And of course, the issue that we're interested in, labor, having to do with ERISA, is found in Title 29. So each subject or title is then subdivided into chapters, and we scroll down here and we see that there is a chapter, sure enough, for Employee Retirement Income Security, Chapter 18, and that's further subdivided. And within the Administration and Enforcement subdivision, we see the section that we got from our ever-useful secondary source references, Section 1144 of Title 29, which of course discusses our issue of preemption. So when looking at the ever-useful table of contents, it's always a good idea to check around your sections, both before and after, to see if you see any other sections that may address your client's issue. So in looking here, we see possibly 1144, civil enforcement. We want to enforce ERISA in the civil arena, so that might make sense. Perhaps administration or regulations, but again, always take a look at the table of contents to see what else you can find that might be useful. So looking here at Section 1144 in the U.S. Code on Lexis, if we take a look at the history, we get a sense of how our hero, Public Law 93-406, relates to the U.S. Code. In other words, how that process of codification actually works, what it actually means. And what we see in the history is, sure enough, our section 1144 was enacted by our hero, Public Law 93-406, and we see some other information in terms of what parts of our hero 93-406, so we see that actually section 514 enacted this particular section 1144. But the history also confirms for us, as we suspected, that there were a whole lot of amendments since 1974 that changed our hero as it was originally enacted in 1974, that our section 1144 got changed in the 80s and again in the 1990s and most recently in 2006. So again, why the U.S. Code is the force for us in statutory legal research is it pulls together all of those amendments and presents to us section 1144 as that section, as that law exists today. To help us make sure we understand what codification means, let's take a look at another source called the Table 3 tool. Don't worry, I'll go into a lot more detail in class about how to find this and how to use it. But let's take a look and see what it tells us about our hero 93-406 and how it gets codified. So sure enough, here's our hero 93-406. And again, it tells us what planet we live on, which is 88 Stat. And what the Table 3 tool does for us is it lists the sections of the Act. So this is the sections of our hero 93-406. So section 1, 2, 3, 4, then it jumps to 101, etc. And it tells us where to find that particular section in the U.S. Code. So here we see the U.S. Code. So we know now, for instance, we would find section 1 in Title 29 of the U.S. Code, and it would be in section 1001 in the note. Scrolling down a little bit further, we see another example of, here's section 106, and you would find section 106 of the Public Law 93-406 of our Act, again in Title 29, but this time in a different section of the U.S. Code, Title 29, section 1026. We go down a little bit further, and we see that this subsection of 111 in Public Law 93-406 in our hero is actually found in a different title of the U.S. Code, in Title 18. Remember, Title 18 was Crimes and Criminal Procedure, and it's in Section 664 of Title 18. Remember, I said that codification means that the different sections get divided up and put in different titles or subject areas of the code. And if we want to find out where our section 1144 originated, we would just scroll down until we see 1144. As we already know, that's in Title 29 of the code. And sure enough, that's in section 514, which is what we saw in those history notes when we were looking at section 1144 on Lexis. So again, you have these sections of the public law, our hero Public Law 93-406, get divided up and put into titles and sections in the U.S. Code. Now, one thing you should note very, very carefully and be sure that you understand is that the sections of the public law are totally different numbers than the section numbers in the U.S. Code. So section 514 in Public Law 93-406, our hero, becomes section 1144 in Title 29. So now we have our force. The force is with us in the United States Code. Specifically, the force is with us in an annotated code. We are looking at an annotated code on Lexis. Here are some of the features. We will talk about why an annotated code is your BFF, your very best friend for research in class. On Lexis, the annotated code is called the U.S. Code Service. Here on Westlaw, you will see its version of the annotated code. West calls its version the United States Code Annotated. The text of the section 1144 will be the same, but the annotated features will look quite a bit different. We will talk about the comparison in more detail in class. Let's take a look also at Bloomberg's version of the annotated code. Again, the text of 1144 will remain the same. Bloomberg calls its annotated code its smart code. You can see the three compared here with how the different versions of the annotations look, or the different features of the annotations look. And again, we will talk in far more detail in depth in class on how to take advantage of these features of the annotated code so that you can use the force when you're doing legal research for statutes. And as with all good stories, to be continued.